From Alliance, Ohio, here in the national semifinals, I'm Pat Coleman, joined by former Thomas More quarterback Kevin Niehus as Mount Union defeated Wesley by the score of 70-21. A game which, pretty much belied all the storylines that we talked about throughout the course of the week leading up to this game, including last year's national quarterfinals in which Wesley allowed Mount Union to jump out to a 31-0 lead and then worked its way back into the game and was in at the end. This was a completely different game, and Kevin, also, you saw Mount Union earlier in the year against one of the other top teams on their schedule in John Carroll, and Mount Union's defense, first of all, just a dramatic improvement from last year and even from earlier this year, you think?
A dramatic improvement, Pat. Schematically, they went from having a man-to-man setup, and you could tell where Haichu was playing the safety, number 22, that their goal today was to put pressure on the quarterback and keep everything in front of them and rally up and tackle.
And on the defensive line, Ferda got the start today because of injury. Not that Ferda's unused to playing; he's the team leader in sacks coming in. But we saw some interesting stuff from him on Saturday as well.
Yeah, another adjustment as far as what you would have seen from the first John Carroll game was Ferda was in a two-point stance and moving around just before the snap. It seemed to cause enough confusion that the Wesley offensive line didn't quite notice that they were also bringing someone off the edge, an extra rusher. Caused some problems for Callahan pretty early.
Yeah, I mean, Callahan, obviously he finishes with some pretty prolific numbers. He was 39 of 69 passing, but he threw 4 interceptions, and he was really on the run, especially early in the game. Because of that?
I'd say it was because of that. He was definitely on the run. It was a tough deal. It's a tough deal as a quarterback not to know that you have everybody covered up blocking-wise, and then to not know where it's coming from. Obviously, it's coming from one side or the other, but he looked surprised a lot to me.
So let's talk about the other quarterback, of course, Kevin Burke. We've been hearing some talk in Alliance since we've been here about Burke's throwing shoulder and him having some issue. As a former quarterback who's had some issues with his throwing shoulder, did you see any evidence of that? What would we be looking for?
We saw it early on in the game with the deep pass that went through the Wesley defensive back's arms and hit off the shoulder pads of Wilkinson down in the southwest corner. And then there were a couple throws that you could tell that his arm is probably a little bit sore. I think that's probably safe to say. But there were other throws that he made that had a lot of gas on him, so he still had his fastball.
B.J. Mitchell, there's a lot of talk about his availability. He'd been banged up a couple of weeks ago. Obviously Mount Union had a chance to kind of empty the bench early and run a lot of guys in there, but Mitchell had 12 carries for 93 yards, and how'd he look to you?
He looked pretty good to me. He had the jump cut down pat. He averaged 7.5 yards a carry, 7.8 yards a carry. Yep. And so he looked like the B.J. Mitchell of old, and I know that the Mount Faithful are going to be very happy that he's in the shape that he's in now going into next week.
And we're going to write about this more over the course of the week, but, just going back to the Mount Union defense and how they've improved over last year, Trey Jones, at cornerback, is a guy who got burned a couple of times in some pretty big plays down the stretch last year. He looked really good today, and, of course, he had an 85-yard interception return for a touchdown.
Yeah, I think the big difference with Trey Jones from early on in his career is he's getting his head around, and the word is that he could run with anybody, even when he was younger, but he wasn't always getting his head around, and so that's a difference now you're seeing in him.
And Mount Union victorious, beating Wesley 70-21. They return to Salem for Stag Bowl 42. We hope to see you there. That's Kevin Niehus. I'm Pat Coleman for D3Football.com.